Hi, welcome to Wise Beyond Bitcoin, your home for the crypto neo news, education, and opportunities. My name is Ryan.
My name is Lucas, and we've got some really fun topic to cover. As you know, we like to talk about the economics of blockchain and crypto as well from our background in the market disruption. Now, one of the big topics when it comes to blockchain and crypto that we've covered and will continue to cover is the concept of replacing money, a money replacement, a money substitute for Bitcoin or for stable coins, and how this works out. And of course, we have a special love and history with how we met with Austrian economics and that branch.
That's right.
So to find this article, I think that was a good find. So this is exciting. And this is a big topic for those of you who want to learn more about, what is the potential, what are the pitfalls, and, what also separates certain cryptocurrencies from stable coins and from others. So they all
right.
These nuances play a role. But yeah, let's kind of get right into it. This is just our research, and it's just sharing information. Do your own research. It's not financial advice or commercial or legal advice or marital advice or medical advice. So make sure you get all those vices elsewhere. This is just, we'll leave all links below so you can do your own research. We recommend that. And what is this all about?
All right. Yeah, let's hop into this one. So F.A. Hayek was an economist, an Austrian economist, won the Nobel in 1974, I believe. And one of the things he's known for is his work on money and macroeconomics and the business cycle and how those things all fit together. And he was among those who were critical of the power governments have over money and how they have used this power historically to transfer wealth, right, from the people to the state, whether it's through deficits or through outright printing of increasing the supply of money. There's various ways of doing it, but essentially there's this problem with plundering people through the printing press, right? And he went beyond just analyzing the problem and kind of advocated for a potential solution. And he wrote a book called The Denationalization of Money, and it talks about it has a vision essentially of a future where there was competing private monies, no money monopoly, and obviously the competition would discipline the various private money producers. And the idea is that through this competition and through this rivalry, none of these producers would be able to get away with the kind of plunder that a monopolist can. And so the idea is to kind of decentralize the production of money such that we could get around this problem. And so he's definitely a name in the macro money world dealing with these issues, right? So the question that we're looking at now is cryptocurrency, is Bitcoin or any of the innovations that have come under that, is that going to be a potential alternative for the central bank's fiat money, or is there more work to be done, right? And so we're going to kind of walk through this article and talk about some of the things that are relevant to that question. And of course, he wrote another book called Choice in Currency that I'm not really familiar. That's an essay rather, but the book that he's known for is called The Denationalization of Money. And but essentially, he goes through some of the problem here, and we don't need to jump on that. I'm assuming everybody knows the problem with printing money and plundering people through inflation. So we're going to just jump right into the question of Bitcoin, and is Bitcoin itself a potential replacement, right? Could it be money? That's the question we're dealing with here. And the article makes the point that Bitcoin, that the attempt to create a private fiat currency is kind of Bitcoin was the first iteration in this, and that but the problem is that yes, it's private and it's decentralized, but the problem is that it has a lot of price volatility, right? So there's a lot of speculation. You can see that, Bitcoin, it's not without, precedent to see Bitcoin fall large amounts, sometimes up to 70 to 80% within a small time frame. Now it's not something that happens all the time, but it does happen from season to season periodically. And there's also great parabolic runs up with Bitcoin as well. So highly speculative, highly volatile. And the thinking is that this is more of a speculative asset than money because of these problems, that it would be probably hard for it to replace the dollar. I mean, you can think of one of the immediate problems would be what's called menu costs. And a menu cost is this need to continuing to change the prices that you display, right? So if Bitcoin were the medium of exchange that is widely used, when you walk into a grocery store and you think about buying a gallon of milk or a cheeseburger or whatever, you would have to imagine that as Bitcoin changes its price in the market, those prices in Bitcoin for those goods and services you'd be shopping for would also have to update. So there'd be this continuous, whether it be an updating or maybe you just have to get a quote from the counter because the price changes too often. That's similar to what happened in Germany during the hyperinflation, right? There was times where people would go to buy things and thinking the price was what it was yesterday, and they find that it changed from day to day. It would change, right? And of course, Bitcoin is a 24-hour market, which is even more volatile than probably the hyperinflation period was, or as volatile. So the same kind of menu cost problem would creep in, and that's one of the big challenges to Bitcoin or anything like Bitcoin serving as a money. And there are some that I think there's reference. We've all seen the famous pizza that was purchased early on in Bitcoin's life, and was worth millions. If they would have held on to that Bitcoin, it would be worth millions now. So they effectively paid millions of dollars for a pizza, and that's the kind of thing that would create a problem, right? For this being a money. Now, the next class of coins that have come out of this Bitcoin crypto revolution is called stablecoins, and these are coins that are constant. They're defined as being constant in terms of a US dollar. And typically, now not all, we'll go into this, but typically a lot of these stable coins are backed or not, or they're collateralized by dollar denominated assets, which are held at commercial banks and other financial institutions. And so immediately you see the problem with this as a money substitute, or as a replacement for money. If you're trying to accomplish this outside of the scope of the central bank or the fiat system, trying to create a new monetary system, well, there's an immediate problem is that if you're tying it all back to these dollar denominated assets, you haven't freed yourself from the government's central bank. And in fact, you're importing their monetary policy into your stable coin, because whatever change happens to the dollar happens 1-to-1 to the stable coin, right? Because it's defined that way.
I think it's a good point that you mentioned that, because importing the monetary policy, because one of the unspoken aspects of this whole process is that, and we've been dancing around it, we've talked about it, the Cantion Effect of how the money creation, the printing, gives wealth to a certain class over others. Now, because how much money currently funds prisons or wars or certain capital structure, the reality is that a moving away from accepting or moving away from that currency system is also drastically changing the structure of the economy. Like the capital structure would change too. If Bitcoin was now being only accepted versus US dollars being accepted around the world, oh, we don't take that anymore, we only take Bitcoin. Well, now a lot of those jobs that were being created by the inflation of dollars, just like we mentioned the old days where people wouldn't go to war anymore because they could no longer raise the taxes to pay for that war. If all of a sudden the currency that's being used to perpetuate certain debts or create certain is no longer being accepted, then it
would change the distribution of income, of spending, of investment, of the whole economy.
Almost, and something like that might require, depending upon the validity, of certain debts and obligations, some jubilee or write-off, definitely a write-down,
right,
in dollar-denominated debts. But one other thing I was going to mention about this is the private competing monies that Hayek mentioned. I could see, whereas just like gold and silver during different times were the commodity that was redeemable, knowing that Bitcoin is, I'm a bit of a Bitcoin, we'll make a video on Bitcoin fundamentalism versus maximalism, but definitely a fundamentalist when it comes to the value proposition of Bitcoin and blockchain. And I could see that as the redeemable function, as this backing for a creation of other digital assets where people may not be spending Bitcoin directly because of it's not,
but maybe a layer on top of or something, right?
But some layers that provide other functions on top of it, and it be that new redeemable gold tied to at the bottom. Yeah, just a thought,
It's a thought.
It is the foundation of the blockchain and crypto market in general. But we still come to, at the time, needing something that's stable, that's already being accepted, and which is dollars or euros or whatever fiat currency,
whatever numeraire.
And there has been a movement to digitize that and put that on the market. And unlike its debt obligated originator, these are often, if not always, founded on if not a collateralization, over collateralization, but being able to be redeemed for that dollar or an asset on the other side.
So we've gotten to the part where we've criticized the tethers and the USDCs of the world, right? Because these are essentially importing the monetary policy of the dollar, and since their reserves and collateral is parked at a centralized institution, it's a point of failure, right? So we're not really creating a truly private alternative in that sense. So that, I would say those first iterations of stablecoins sort of fail this test that would be, to become a Hayekian competitive currency. So moving on, the next iteration, and this is yet to be seen, but there's been a lot of talk about it, and the idea that there be a central bank digital currency created. And there's been even discussions of this occurring in a way that would preserve privacy in for the, like a digital cash kind of. There's a proposal out there to preserve that and to have like a treasury controlled stable coin, which would be which would still be private in the sense that you could spend it just the way you do paper money. And it would, but the proposal is like a bit of a black box, right? There's no ledger, there's no public ledger, and we're just taking it on trust that this is a truly a private transaction. So I feel like that certainly would not be a Hayekian outcome, right? So we can kind of just move on from that right out of the bat. But so now we're getting into the kind of the innovation or looking ahead, right? Well, so what if the previous iterations, Bitcoin maybe doesn't breach the standard we need for it to be money because of its volatility? If the first iteration of stablecoins fails that standard because of their centralization and their ties to the dollar, then what would a Hayekian alternative look like, right? And that's kind of what we're going to focus on at the end of this section here. So, and we're going to have our own thoughts beyond the article too. But one of the proposals would be to have a dollar, this is a digital dollar, digital currency, which is pegged to the dollar, but have that peg adjust for changes in the consumer price index, so that you get what Irving Fisher would call a compensated dollar, a dollar which would automatically increase in value to offset the inflation rate. And of course, you could do this through a smart contract with oracles, right? Those kind of that can be done. Now the question is what would you make up? How would you adjust it, right? Because one of the problems we had was the CPI. We did a video recently on Trueflation, a protocol that's helping to bring truth and transparency to inflation statistics. But one of the things we mentioned in that video, and we talk about a lot, is the CPI can often be gamed and potentially understates what really is going on with inflation. And it's not designed to be a widespread statistic capturing it, right? There's the producer price index, and there's various iterations of the CPI as well. So it's a very limited, at best it's limited, right? So it doesn't capture the full effect of what's going on in the money supply. So what would what would be better? How could we improve upon that? I think one of the things, and Shade Protocol has their protocol on Secret. They have a privacy preserving stablecoin known as Silk, and within this protocol there is a indexing design, right, where it compensates Silk such that it will hold it constant and over time, so that the dollar inflation isn't imported into the Silk coin. And they do this through a global volatility shock absorption index. It's an indexing, and they use, instead of just looking at the dollar and taking a narrow look at the CPI, they go beyond that, and they index the peg of Silk using the following currencies. So it's a whole basket of currencies that are being weighted at different weights depending on, I guess, their amounts and GDP. And as you can see, this is the list, and this would give you an even broader measure of what's going on globally with inflation. And beyond that, there are ways of incorporating GDP as well, in different metrics, to see how the real economy is growing, because that would influence the demand for money, and it would also be economic growth is deflationary. So you take all these variables in, and you can basically create a more complex, more accurate, I would argue, compensated dollar, or more accurate than just looking at the CPI as your adjusting mechanism. So this is to say that Silk has got some cool ideas. Now, in discussing this, there's one big this seems to be like a great innovation, but there's one thing that Silk doesn't really try to deal with, and that this article on Hayek didn't even mention. And you touched on it earlier, but I'd like to really focus on it, because that's what our point, kind of what the final point is here. And it's not just that the potential solution, the potential new money, should have an indexing or an adjustment so it's compensated with the inflation rate, but it's also important to look at how the distribution of those new tokens hits people's wallets, and how does when that money enters the economy, how does that affect people, and how does that affect inequality, and how does that change incomes? And the reason I bring this up is because in our system, in the fiat system, the dollar denominated, fiat money system we live in, the way new money enters the economy in the form of loans, and how it flows to certain groups first and then later to others, has been a big deal in shaping the distribution of income, right? So to put it really simple, whoever gets this new money first essentially gets to spend it at its full value before the rest of the prices have increased in the economy. But as they spend it, it circulates from firm to firm, from household to household, and everyone who gets it subsequently is going to be able to spend is going to get less value out of it, purchasing power, because the prices have tended to go up over time. So there's this Cantillon effect, and this is a economist, Richard Cantillon, you can look him up, but there's this Cantillon effect economists talk about, where the distribution of money actually changes the distribution of income, and also changes the distribution, the way prices. It first changes prices, right? The prices that people pay and charge, but then later on, after those price changes have kind of worked themselves out, the net result is some people now have more wealth, or more purchasing power, or more money, or more assets, and others have fewer. And if this injection of money had never occurred, those changes wouldn't have occurred. So there's definitely a wealth effect that happens through the distribution of new money.
So to
And
break it
so,
down in our
yeah,
current model, how the system works now, the fact that the government can just print money and create money to spend it on whatever jobs or resources are needed. There's a distribution of wealth, and there's an effect on the capital structure of what jobs are created through that alone. And the fact that we've talked about this in the past, but most money creation in the economy actually comes through commercial banks and those with a license to monetize the debt that they can take on. So the more debt they can take on, the more money they can create. And so we're seeing that there's that people talk about the financial class, that class getting that redistribution of wealth that continues to get larger and larger and larger,
yes,
because there's a privilege basically through a certain group of classes to print money. And if we can get away from that privilege goes away, then the Cantillon effect, so to speak,
would be muted. Yeah. And luckily this we haven't figured out a lot of things in crypto and money, but we have figured out how to solve the Cantillon effect. That has been solved, and it's not finally solved, but the pathway to getting around that problem is clear. And
Yeah.
Hex is the innovator here. Now, we did a video on time, what we call time value currencies. This is not a term you might hear anywhere else, but it is a term we've coined, and we're going to try to get it out there in the popular lexicon, a neologism of our
Nothing
own,
we've
right?
created. Nothing we've
But
created.
yeah,
Just describing
just
what
describing.
Richard Hart created, and with what Hex represents from a monetary economic perspective. It's elegant and it's beautiful. So what is a time value currency? Why do we say time value?
Yeah, well, that's the key word, time value. So with Hex, and there's others, but Hex is the first. So how it works is you purchase Hex, and then you have to stake it. You have to lock it up for a certain amount of time. There's various time periods you can choose from, right? The longer just like a typical CD or bond, the way it works is that the longer you commit those resources, the greater reward you get, right? And the way that the new Hex comes into distribution, the way that the newly minted Hex comes and hits people's wallets is through this staking mechanism. So it's through the rewards that those new coins are distributed, right? It's the interest, to use a financial term that we might be familiar with. It's the interest on the investment that's the newly created Hex. And so the Hex is not arbitrarily loaned or deposited in an institution anywhere where some narrow few get to control where it goes first, but rather it hits the wallets of the users without regard to position or politics or anything. It's just a function of time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a function of your principle, what you've committed, right? So in this sense, and why this is notable is we're decentralizing the distribution of new money and spreading it out amongst a much wider base of users, instead of just having it be the purview of a small class. And so that's why we call it time value money. The money is distributed based on time and the fact that delayed gratification.
It rewards delayed gratification, which is natural incentive for anyone. The idea that you can save, and the longer you save, the more you receive, and that it's because the way it works. I was going to say, if it'd be great if something was tied to Bitcoin, but in theory, Hex is tied to Bitcoin because in its origination, anyone with Bitcoin could free claim Hex. So in essence, it is built off of Bitcoin as an origin, right, in a sense, but it also has a massive airdrop coming soon with Pulse Chain and other EVM chain being launched to make it more efficient. A lot of the problems with smart contracts built on Ethereum, which was originally built, is that the gas prices make it not usable. And I would say that becomes, when we look at a money and something being used, if you can't afford to stake it, then it becomes unusable. So it's great to see solutions. And we're still early in blockchain and crypto. It's the first of its kind, but even the T Ford, there were some adjustments and improvements made upon the automobile to get that
Right.
heated seat and the headlights and the windshield wipers. So I think that really excited with what was already created with Hex. It's one of the few major innovations. It's a complete smart contract using the decentralized security of blockchain. And
Now let's touch on that, because we were both talking about how these DAO-based stablecoins, while they do seem to have some big innovations happening, especially with Silk, right? The privacy preserving stablecoin, it's got a compensated dollar through the indexing, the basket of currencies. But one thing that it doesn't have is one thing that's not true about it is it's not a complete smart contract, right? It's a work in progress. There's a team, there's a foundation, essentially. There's a community. It's crowdsourcing the decision making, right? The community decision making.
Transparent. It's most things in crypto. I mean,
Yes.
most blockchain and crypto have DAOs or a founder or a foundation or a group that's steering and making decisions to allow it. So that's why, and we'll do a follow-up another video on flight to quality in a bear market over the next year or two, what you might want to look at for a long-term portfolio of not financial advice, but looking at.
But wouldn't it be kind of the case that the ideal stablecoin, money, whatever, fill in the blank, would be something that combines all of these attributes, right? So it's like that the time value distribution that you see in Hex, the fact that it's a smart contract that's complete and audited, that if we could build maybe a stablecoin with privacy preserving and an index to the GDP and to other issues, so it can be compensating for inflation and economic growth. If you could combine all of these things together, that seems to me, now I know this hasn't been done yet, but to me that seems like where things are heading, right? That's like, these are the unfinished, questions and challenges that we have to kind of solve before we can really get to Hayek's vision.
Yeah, possibly. I'm still at that. I'm still wondering and feeling that the volatility over time doesn't iron out with adoption and growth, and it's still a young emerging market, and that the solution might be in some of these projects, but definitely there's some value added to be done. I mean, we mentioned, we didn't talk about this. One of the other great things about Silk is that a pink elephant in the room of what is money, privacy, and for people to be able to transact value amongst each other without the whole world being able to peer in, has always been an inherent quality that no one's ever thought about, whether it was gold or cash or anything. It was one of those features that transitioned over nicely. However, that's not something that transitions over nicely in blockchain and crypto. So having a privacy preserving aspect is another feature. So I think that time value, Cantion Effect, along with the privacy preserving value, I think, and there are layers being built to make these things happen. Many solutions may be in layer twos, because
that's true.
There are smart contracts that can be moved around, and there can be more bug-free audited features than you can get in layer ones, and there might be a level of redundancy there. So what do you have here?
No, we're not going to watch this because it's 15 minutes long, but I just want to have it. I want to bring our attention to this little video that the guys over at Silk did that really lays out some awesome attributes about their project, their protocol, and kind of explains it in greater detail. So we'll have links below for that. And this is one of our favorite projects in crypto, so definitely want to show them some love. But yeah, this is a great video. I really enjoyed it. It's well made. It's easy to watch, easy on the eyes, well edited, and it's got a lot of great information. And we'll have that below.
So make sure you check it out. I know. I think that's a great video, because going back to the stable coins and the role that they play, another great thing about Silk is that you often find certain stable coins having issues with regulation. That's been a problem with Tether a long time. Or if it's USDC or these others that are actually backing assets denominated in that currency, then are at risk for regulation. And
Yeah.
if you come up with an algorithmic stable coin that is designed to kind of bring the world together by looking at the top currencies, and there's something elegant and beautiful about that. And of course, also with the privacy, I mentioned again, the fact that it's built with privacy and for people to be able to have transactions and maintain that stable purchasing power, but also not broadcast every transaction on the blockchain. That's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing as well.
The privacy layer, I think, is something that needs to be demanded and insisted upon. I mean, I don't know why it would be an afterthought, right? It's definitely foundational.
And the
And we
time,
have a lot of,
and for
oh,
me, the
good.
time value layer that we mentioned with
Yeah,
that
same way.
that's kind of like, well, this is the most efficient way when you look at validators and how it benefits those that can amass more of that token, or miners who have better access to cheap energy and mining equipment, to be
Right.
able to monetize time in a way that treats everyone equally is,
Yeah.
I think, like the big,
It's an
innovation, smart contract.
And we have a whole video on, if you look under our videos, we have a whole video on the time value currency innovation and break that down. So if we didn't do that justice in this one, then check that out. We have other playlists as well.
We do. We've got how to get started if you're brand new to Web 3.0, and we've got how to start your secret crypto journey. It's a Kepler wallet, but the same with MetaMask and Ethereum chains. We've done that in the past. We will add more. We've got DeFi tutorials. There are airdrops and opportunities on a lot of these chains, because if you support the communities early and you're just involved and you participate, then the applications being built on those chains, which are many and growing, they will reward you. So this is a great time to take your time to get involved and learn. We have walkthroughs, secret NFTs, because we've mentioned the privacy feature. There are really neat applications, not just NFTs, but messaging platform, Alter. We've got to follow up with them. We actually have a group. We're going to make a video here soon so that you can sign up and get top news and information in our group and the latest. But we also talk about things other than just crypto.
Yeah, we do the macro outlook, where we take a look at the monetary policy and inflation and supply chain issues, geopolitical issues, and throw it all together and see what we can conclude about where prices are heading, crypto and mainstream markets as well. So always,
and we do interviews. We've got some awesome interviews coming up. So hit the notification bell, subscribe if you like that stuff. We just rocked out a great interview with the CEO of Points Cash and what they're doing to use blockchain technology to help allow people to tap into rewards and liquidity. I mean, just great things being done to revolutionize the market and help people.
No doubt.
That's what a lot of this is about, is how can we find those opportunities to help each other during these crazy, beautiful times.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time.
Have a beautiful day. Namaste, y'all.
Thank you.